why your money still isn't shifting, the hidden link between the priestess wound, receiving, and wealth. So you may know that you have money blocks. You may have already done the mindset work, the journaling, the affirmations, the vision board, the healing, but money still isn't flowing in the way that you know that it could, or even in the way that you know you would like it to. So what's happening? Why does it still feel like something is stuck, even when you are aware that there is a block? For many spiritual women, the block isn't even about money. It's about power, it's about safety, it's about being seen and visibility. It's about what your soul, your body, and your lineage have learned to associate with receiving wealth, prosperity, abundance, and all of those beautiful things. And this is where we need to go deeper to really discover exactly what is going on and why your money, the flow of money, wealth, prosperity, and all of the things still feel completely blocked. One of the biggest mistakes is treating money like an isolated problem. We tend to think that we just need to improve our mindset. I just need to believe I am worthy, or I just need a better strategy in order to create more income for myself. And yes, those things do help. Mindset, of course, really does help with bringing in money. And strategy, yes, that is going to help if you've got a strategy in your business. But when money still isn't shifting, it's because the block is not a logical block. It's not perhaps directly associated with money and the things that we associate with what we need to do in regard to money and what that money block is, right? It's going to be energetic, it's going to be emotional, and it's going to be embodied. Yes, you may want more, but another part of you may still feel that being visible is not safe. Receiving feels uncomfortable, or you don't feel worthy, or wealth is not something that you can hold. And that's what keeps things stuck. So let's have a look at a couple of the woundings that really do impact how we show up, how we receive money, how money flows to us. So the first is the priestess wound. This is one of the deepest layers. The priestess wound shows up fear of being seen, fear of speaking your truth, fear of leadership, fear of fully stepping into your power, not feeling comfortable in spiritual communities, perhaps having your voice or your power taken away from you, being silenced, being persecuted, being judged, your power being misused. There is a lot that goes in with the priestess wound. And often, this doesn't make sense because parts of you want to be seen. You may be showing up in different ways in your life, but other parts of you remember what happened the last time you were fully visible, or the last time you were in your power, or the last time you spoke up for yourself. So you hold back. Perhaps you soften your message, or you hesitate, or you don't fully step forwards. And that reflects how money shows up in your life, because your income is directly connected to how visible you allow yourself to be. So regardless of whether you're working for yourself or working for a company, right? If you're not visible, then you might miss promotions. If you're not visible in your business, then you're not going to call in the right clients. Okay, so the priestess wound is one of the biggest wounds that I see in my clients that are stopping them from really making money, holding on to money, and allowing the flow of prosperity, abundance, wealth, and all of those things. The second card so this is where we go even deeper. Vows and contracts around money. Because for many people, this isn't just about mindset. It's about vows and contracts that are still active in your field, in your nervous system, in your DNA. You may have made perhaps vows of poverty in other lifetimes, and they weren't mistakes. They had a purpose in those lifetimes. You may have been a monk or a priestess in service, or someone devoted to spiritual work where wealth was not a part of your path, where you chose simplicity, devotion, or service over material wealth. And in that moment, a vow was made. Something like, I vow to never be wealthy, or I will not be rich, or I won't act like that person, or I will serve without receiving. Okay, and here is the key. That vow doesn't automatically disappear. It still exists in your energy, in your Akashic field, and in your subconscious programming until it is consciously seen and cleared. So in this lifetime, you may consciously want money, but energetically, there are still parts of you holding on to that vow of poverty or that agreement or that soul contract that is blocking you from making money in this lifetime. And it's not just vows of poverty. There can be contracts around money, such as contracts to struggle, contracts to stay small, contracts not to surpass others, or contracts to remain in survival, right? In that fight and flight energy, or contracts tied to loyalty, family, or identity. And these contracts were often created to keep you safe, keep you accepted, and keep you aligned with a certain path. But now they're limiting you. So what happens is you try to grow, you try to receive, you try to expand, but something invisible keeps pulling you back, and it pulls you back into that safety because part of you is still holding on to an old agreement. And this can feel heavy, it can feel uncomfortable, it can feel blocked, it can feel inconsistent, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because something deeper is still running in your energy system. So you may be trying to create abundance while still energetically committed to a life of lack and scarcity. This is why this awareness isn't always enough, because these are not just thoughts, these are agreements that you have made. And until those agreements are seen and consciously released, receiving will never feel fully safe. Worth and the prostitution wound. This is one of the deepest and most misunderstood layers because it's not just about feeling worthy, it's about how worth has been encoded through experience. The prostitution wound is not about the literal meaning, it's about a distortion between giving, receiving, and value. At some point, there was an experience where your value became conditional, your energy was exchanged in imbalance, your worth was tied to what you gave, you needed validation, you needed acceptance. So now you may feel like you have to over-deliver to prove yourself, to justify your pricing, to for you to give more before you receive. And this creates a very specific pattern. And this is where receiving becomes something you have to earn, not something you allow. So this is where feast and famine cycles come in. So even when money does come in, it doesn't feel clean. It comes with pressure, expectation, over responsibility. And over time, this becomes completely exhausting. And you connect money with giving parts and pieces of yourself away in order to receive that money. So what happens is you subconsciously limit what you receive. You keep things manageable. You stay in a range that feels safe. Not because you're not capable of more, but because your system associates more with imbalance and a lack of security and feeling safe. Okay, so ancestral blocks and patterns. And this is where it moves beyond you, because you're not just working with your own experiences, you're working with what you inherited and what has been passed down through your ancestral line. If your lineage experienced poverty, instability, survival issues, financial stress, lack, loss, then this is what has shaped your nervous system. And here's what that means. Even if your life is different, your body may still be preparing for the same outcomes. So when money comes in, instead of relaxation, you feel tension, pressure, fear of losing it, urgency to move it or spend it. Because your system is wired for, this doesn't last, this could disappear, something will go wrong, and all of those negative energies and beliefs. And so you don't just struggle to make money, you struggle to hold it. And this is what we call capacity, because it's not just about attracting more, it's about becoming someone who can hold more safely. So let's talk a little bit more about awareness. So awareness is a great place to start. And this is where many people get stuck, because they think, if I understand it, it should change. Awareness is the beginning, and it does help when you're aware of something, because you have that awareness to be able to start making a change. But it is not the completion. You can know that you have the priestess wound, or you have a vow of poverty in place, or you struggle to receive and you still feel stuck, because these patterns are not just mental, they live in your DNA, in your nervous system, in your emotional responses, and in your soul memory. So they don't shift through thinking alone, they shift through awareness, embodiment, energetic work, repetition, safety, healing, clearing, working within your Akashic records with your Akashic guides to help you to understand the block, to understand the wounding or the vow, so that you can start to release it. And this is why deeper work really does matter. Not because you're broken, but because you're layered. So what is the real shift? So the shift is not, how do I make more money? The shift is, how do I become safe with more? Safe to be seen, safe to receive, safe to hold, safe to expand, safe to step into your power, safe to shine your light. Because once safety is established, everything else begins to move. You don't need to force abundance. You become available for it, and that changes everything. Your money isn't just responding to what you want, it's responding to what you feel safe having. If this resonated you, then you are already aware that this goes deeper than just surface level work. And for many people, there are still deeper layers here, contracts, patterns, and guidance that is unique to you. This is the work that I guide through my Priestess Path reading, where we go into your Akashic records to uncover what specifically is running for you and what is specifically holding you back from receiving more abundance, wealth, prosperity, and what you're ready to step into next. If you feel called to go deeper, you'll find the link below. And I'd love to know what landed most for you in this video. Was it visibility and the priestess wound, receiving and contracts, or worth and exchange? Let me know in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Ciao for now.